And in that one class of 1974 at West Point, that 1 year, there was the man who is now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, and General David Petraeus, who was head of the CIA and commander of the Iraq War and commander of the Afghanistan War, and General Keith Alexander, who runs the NSA. He heads up the largest intelligence agency of any kind in the entire world, and he simultaneously runs the fastest growing part of the United States Armed Services, Cyber Command. So Petraeus, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and Alexander, head of the NSA and Cyber Command, all in the same class from West Point, which was the first class to graduate once the Vietnam War was well and truly over. The new leaks about how much the NSA is spying on us, despite their remit to only spy on people in other countries, the huge amount of attention to these new revelations has obscured a little bit the fact that these are just the latest in a long series of revelations about how much the NSA is spying on us. And you can go all the way back to the Church Committee hearings from the time that Martin Dempsey and David Petraeus and Keith Alexander were just getting out of West Point. You can go all the way back to the Church Committee hearings, and the big revelation back then were NSA operations like Operation Shamrock.
The Select Committee made its first inquiries into this operation last May.
The Church Committee, headed by Senator Frank Church of Idaho, exposed widespread abuses of power at the FBI and the CIA and revealed that the NSA had been spying on Americans for decades. What was Operation Shamrock?
Operation Shamrock was a program of the National Security Agency to obtain access to telegrams that were leaving the United States for other countries, for foreign countries. And the idea was that the NSA would look through these telegrams, look for telegrams of interest from a foreign intelligence standpoint.
Are you saying all the telegrams going out of the U.S.? How did they get access?
They asked. I mean, that sounds very simplistic, but they approached the communications carriers, the telegraph companies concerned.
RCA, ITT.
And Western Union.
So in Operation Shamrock, what we saw was the NSA turning its foreign intelligence operations internally on American communications.
Well, exactly, yeah. Operation Shamrock was getting access to all the communications going through the United States.
There were very few rules back there, very few laws, regulations that dealt with what NSA or any intelligence agency could collect back then. The capabilities were there, the restraints weren't there. The temptation is to do it.
The committee believes that serious legal and constitutional questions are raised by this program.
The NSA had been founded in the 1950s. By the 1970s, the revelations that were shocking the country about what they were doing with telegrams, right? By the time James Bamford was writing the first big investigatory book about the NSA in 1982, a book called The Puzzle Palace, we were just on the verge of the computing revolution. Remember, Time magazine named the personal computer machine of the year in 1983. Right? Imagine how NSA's capabilities have changed since then. By the 2000s, the NSA's computing power was being put to use in the form of wholesale tapping of internet and phone communications. By 2005, we had the revelation of all that warrantless wiretapping and the NSA essentially making and taking its own copy of everything happening on the internet. We have had these revelations periodically, essentially since the NSA was born. And since guys like James Bamford first, and then a lot of other people thereafter, started reporting on all the secret things that the NSA does. But these revelations that periodically shock us about what they do, they basically never result in them stopping doing this thing that is shocking us. The programs, even the revealed programs, the leaked programs, they don't go away. They just expand over time. If we are weirded out by the power of the NSA, their power so far is something that only grows. So how does that end? Joining us tonight for the interview is James Bamford. He is the original and foremost historian of the NSA in this country. His newest article for Wired magazine about General Keith Alexander's role as head of the NSA and Cyber Command went online at wired.com at the top of the show. James Bamford, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here again.
In Silent War, this new article that you've published at Wired, it seems like you are trying to convey the immense power that General Keith Alexander has in a way that is underappreciated. What do you think we broadly don't understand about how powerful he is and and the agencies he runs?
Well, he's the most powerful intelligence figure in the history of the United States. There's never been an intelligence official with this much power. He's head of the largest intelligence agency on Earth. In addition to that, he's head of the Cyber Command. The Cyber Command, under that, he's got an army. He's got the 2nd Army under him, the 24th Air Force, and the 10th Fleet. He's got an Army, Navy, and Air Force under him. So, and he's a 4-star general. The first time you've ever had an NSA director as a 4-star general. He's been there. Next year, he'll have been there 9 years. So in terms of the length of time, the amount of power he's accumulated, the amount of responsibility, intelligence, and the military and cyber and so forth, it's just an enormous amount of power for a person that nobody would even recognize if you walk down the street in Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington.
Is it correct to say that over time, as there have been revelations about things that the NSA does that weird us out for a period of time, like we're being weirded out right now by these new revelations, that those revelations have not resulted in a contraction of power or the NSA stopping those programs that have been revealed?
Well, it worked in 1978 when they created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. From then until 2001, the NSA obeyed the law, and everything went fine. It was when the Bush administration decided to go around the court, just bypass the law, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that's when everything started collapsing. And then when, after that was discovered, Congress, which was now extremely weak on these whole issues as opposed to back when Frank Church was running the intelligence committees, all they basically did was take what was illegal during the Bush administration and make it legal.
Right.
And then leave an enormous hole open for whatever else they want to do, and then make the whole thing secret. So we're basically back to the pre-78 days when the time when Shamrock was going, and before we really had a working FISA court, because the FISA court as it is now is basically just neutered. It's fairly useless.
That is why I wanted to talk to you about this in particular, because I feel like you, more than anybody, have chronicled the way that NSA power has grown. It's grown because of technology, but also it's grown because it can, and because of secrecy. When they did get brushed back in the 1970s, it was because Congress stood up on its hind legs and made them. Is Congress now capable of doing that? Or is the genie so out of the box in terms of NSA power that it's unconstrainable by the legislature?
No, it's impossible for the Congress to do. That's the problem. There is no oversight. There's no oversight from the FISA court for the reasons I just mentioned, and now there's no oversight from Congress either, because all Congress wants to do... Well, Congress originally in 78, they were very strong, and they created this check and balance on NSA, the FISA court. Now the Congress, all they want to do is increase the budget for the intelligence community. They become, instead of watchdogs for the public, they become cheerleaders for the intelligence committee.
If they did want to change, if they did want to exert oversight over what the NSA was doing and rein them in to stop them from doing some things they're doing that Congress decided they shouldn't do, could they?
Sure they could, and what it really takes is the public. The public has to take this as a serious issue and be concerned about it. I mean, the politicians are always following what the public does. And if you can't get the public excited about the government doing these things, then you're not going to get the politicians to do it. That's why scandals like this help generate that. They act as trigger mechanisms or catalysts for the public to suddenly wake up that, hey, this, did you know every day you pick up the telephone, a record of that is going to NSA, the big data center they're building in Utah and so forth. So if that wakes public up, maybe that'll wake up the politicians and maybe there'll be a change.
You don't sound hopeful.
No.
If you're not hopeful, how do you think this ends?
It's just more accumulation of power and more infringement on privacy. I mean, George Orwell wrote about all those things in 1984, where governments accumulate power and then use the surveillance to keep their power going. And I think that's the problem we have here. I mean, look at Keith Alexander. He's been there for 9 years. He's got military under him, the largest intelligence agencies under him. And when I interviewed people for this article at the CIA, they said that we referred to Keith Alexander as Emperor Alexander, because whatever Keith wants, Keith gets.
It's impressive research, as always, that you always bring to this topic, but it's great to have you here to help understand it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel.
James Bamford, NSA and U.S. intelligence expert. He's author of The Puzzle Palace and Body of Secrets, and this latest article about the NSA is online at wired.com. We'll be right back.